There's a particular kind of silence that settles over Australia at around 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Not peaceful silence. The other kind. The kind where someone is lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, running numbers in their head that will not balance no matter how many times they run them. This is the middle class now, not struggling in any visible way, not failing by any traditional measure, but quietly, persistently, feeling like the ground is softer than it used to be. And nobody talks about it. Because how do you explain that you earn more money than your parents ever did, and somehow feel less certain about everything? In 2024, the median full-time salary in Australia sat at around $98,000 a year. On paper, that's comfortable. On paper, that's success. But in Sydney, after tax, after rent, after the groceries that somehow cost $340 for two people now, after the car registration and the electricity bill that doubled without warning, $98,000 starts to look less like security and more like a number you're running away from the back of. Rent in Sydney's inner suburbs crossed $700 a week for a modest two-bedroom apartment. In Melbourne, it wasn't far behind. The people paying those prices aren't struggling, not by any official definition. They have jobs, they have decent clothes, they go out occasionally, but they are no longer saving in any meaningful way. And they know it. They just don't say it at dinner. This is what distinguishes the modern middle class from any previous version. It's not poverty, it's proximity to it. The constant awareness that the distance between your current life and financial difficulty is thinner than it looks from the outside. A generation ago, the middle class had a different relationship with money. It was largely unremarkable. You earned, you spent modestly, you saved slowly, you bought a house in your early 30s. The math was uncomfortable sometimes, but it was navigable. The goalposts were visible. Now the goalposts have moved so far that some people have stopped looking for them. The average house price in Sydney in 2024 was around $1.2 million. In Melbourne, just under $1 million. For a household earning $130,000 combined, which sounds substantial until you see these numbers, saving a 20% deposit while paying current rent is a decade-long project. If nothing goes wrong, if both people stay employed, if rates don't rise again, if the landlord doesn't sell. That's a lot of ifs to build a life around. There's something psychologists call financial hypervigilance. It's not the same as being broke. It's the state of someone who has enough, but only just, and who has learned to never fully relax because of that fact. Their nervous system quietly monitors every transaction, every price increase, every news headline about interest rates. A lot of Australians are living there right now, not in crisis, in low-level chronic alertness. Checking banking apps at midnight, not because there's a problem, but because checking has become a habit that feels safer than not checking. That's worth sitting with for a moment. The anxiety isn't a response to something going wrong. It's a response to how fragile right feels. The RBA raised rates 13 times in roughly 18 months. Each time, the language around it was calm, measured, economic. Each time, somewhere in a suburb of Brisbane or Adelaide or Perth, a family quietly recalculated their month. Quietly moved money from one account to another. Quietly said nothing about it to the people around them. Because this kind of pressure doesn't announce itself. It accumulates. Walk through any packed cafe in Melbourne on a Thursday morning. The tables are full. The oat lattes are flowing. From the outside, everything looks prosperous and relaxed. What you can't see are the mental calculations happening behind every smiling face. Whether this coffee counts as a luxury. Whether the lunch that follows should be packed from home tomorrow. Whether the weekend trip they're half planning is something they can actually afford, or just something they're imagining as a way to feel normal. This is the hidden tax of modern middle-class life, the cognitive load of being financially anxious while presenting as financially fine. And that presentation matters to people, perhaps more than it should. Because the Australian middle class has always partly defined itself through the appearance of a certain standard of living. The house, the holidays, the restaurants, the car. When the income exists, but the savings don't, people often choose the appearance over the foundation. The performance of stability has become nearly as expensive as stability itself. And that choice, made quietly and repeatedly, is how a $95,000 salary produces almost no net worth after 3 years. The superannuation balance of the average 35-year-old Australian sits at around $60,000 to $80,000. The figure required to retire comfortably, according to most estimates, is somewhere north of $500,000 for a single person. Just let that gap exist for a second. Most people don't look at their super. It feels too abstract, too far away, too uncomfortable to sit with, so it sits there, quietly either growing or not growing enough, while life continues in the foreground. But the foreground gets louder every year. Something interesting happens to people when their financial situation feels uncertain, but their income looks fine. They don't save more. They often spend more, not recklessly, but deliberately, in small ways, as a form of emotional relief. A nice dinner, a weekend away. Something new that makes Tuesday feel slightly less like a trap. Economists call parts of this lifestyle inflation. Psychologists call it self-regulation. Most Australians call it nothing because they don't think of it as a pattern. They think of it as ordinary life. And that's the tension that never resolves. The income rises. The expectations rise with it. The costs rise faster than both. And somewhere in the middle of that equation, the space for actual financial progress quietly disappears. It's not a spending problem. It's not an income problem. It's a gap problem. And the gap keeps widening while everyone keeps showing up to work on Monday. The middle class was always a story Australians told themselves about safety, about having enough insulation between yourself and genuine hardship, about the promise that if you worked steadily and lived reasonably, you would be okay. Not rich, but okay. That story hasn't collapsed, but it's changed shape in a way that nobody officially announced. There was no press conference, no moment where someone said, "The version of this you were promised is no longer available." It just quietly became true. The people living inside it now are earning real money, in real jobs, in a country that still looks, from a distance, like one of the most livable in the world. And they are tired. Not dramatically, not in ways that show up on any survey or government report. Just tired in the specific way people get when they've been doing everything right for a long time and the finish line keeps turning out to be further than the last sign said. Most of them will not change anything. They'll keep going, keep working, keep checking the app at midnight, keep telling themselves it'll settle down soon. And that might be the most honest thing you can say about where Australia is right now. Not that people are giving up, just that a lot of them are waiting for a relief that isn't coming.